What's up guys, this is G coming back to you for another tutorial. This is part 3 on the program. So we covered the kick, snares, now we're getting into a little bit of the bass. But for the bass, I'm going to get into a little bit more EQing, and I'm actually going to get into compression. Doing it. So I'm going to show you ways of using the typical techniques, plugins, settings that I use to get a fucking great sounding bass sound. I'm going to show you step by step, load up the plugin, and I'll tweak it the way you want to get it sounding good. Beyond that, I'm going to show you a little bit more creative sort of mixing to get the bass moving and grooving a little bit more. So with that being said, this is G from Ganesh Studio Productions. Let's get into it. Okay, so now you pretty much hear the bass just by itself. I've got all this cool stuff, and it's all, trust me, it's all basic default settings. But I'm going to go through it one at a time. So here we go. API by Waves, awesome plugin. I'm going to turn this crap off, bypass it. The main idea for this plugin is I'm going to take out frequencies that I don't need. So I want to get this bass a little bit more tighter, a little bit more sort of aggressive sounding. So 300 Hertz is a little bit of the air factor, a bit of the muddiness factor. I'm going to cut that out. Then I got 500 Hertz, which is a lot more of the air factor. So if you paid attention with the other tutorials I did with the EQing situations, you'd be able to hear this a little bit more. But let's start with these off, and then I'm going to introduce them. Let me make sure you hear it. Let me go boost it. So what you should be noticing there is the frequency sort of being sucked out in that low sort of register, but you got to remember, what else am I going to put in that? If my track is limited to elements, then I might push that frequency, but I might have another track with that has synths, that has the guitars, that has this, and blah blah blah. So I need to create space for these instruments. Plus, I want to get that bass really nice and tight, so I can work it hard. So with that being said, let me go on to the next frequency, which is 500 Hertz. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to boost it so you can really hear it and focus on it. I'm going to cut it. So you're probably thinking, wow, gee, it sounds pretty good with the 500 Hertz in, right? But maybe not sure until I put the rest of the stuff in. So right now it does sound like it's adding some oomph. So I'm just sort of gutting the frequencies that I don't need out of this. I'm just going to put in things that I need. But you be the judge of it. This might work for your example, or your song type, your way of producing, your way of listening. It could do either way. But this is an example for you to just hear it and go, okay, I want to add it in, or no, I'm taking it out. It's up to you. So what I'm doing is actually taking a little bit out of that sort of air factor, cleaning it up, making it look good. Next thing to add is the CLA2A by Waves. Haven't done anything to it. It's just standard plugin, standard settings. I'm using this as an EQ rather than a compressor. So once again, I'm using this compressor as an EQ compared to a normal compressor. The reason why I'm using this compared to other stuff is because it adds a tonal frequency that's very favorable. It's adding really good odd harmonics to a song and to the sound because of the tube factor with this Teletronics 2A, but normally it's called the LA2A. That's the hardware gear. But man, this adds some really cool stuff. So use this plugin if you want to add some thickness and some really oomph to a track. Just by adding it, it's almost EQing it without even compressing it. So mind your ears, it's going to happen right now. All right, so the idea is just because I've just added the plugin, I know it's getting louder volume-wise, but getting beyond that stuff and getting to more the quick sort of things, just listen to the tonal aspects that it's adding. It's adding a lot more of those low mid frequencies that pushes that sound to make it sound thicker. I know volume, blah, 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 you can do whatever in the comments and give a shit about stuff, but I'm just trying to give you quick things and then you can tweak it from your knowledge base to get it where you need to. So I'm just adding this on the bass after I've cut the frequencies I don't need, and then adding this compressor, adding this tonal sort of aspect in after that to flavor the sound. Now I'm going to work with it. So now follow me. I'm going to turn this off. Just adding analog hiss I don't need. You've got like a little bit of a high frequency EQ. Let me cover this plugin properly later. Let me go through it quickly. Next thing is I'm going to add some low end to it. Now I've got a Puig Tech. A Puig Tech is a copy of a Pultec EQ P1A, which is a hardware unit, which sounds freaking amazing. It's a tube gear, tube EQ, but the way this works, it works a little bit differently from your normal parametric to semi-parametric EQ, because this and this can manipulate this. So the way you boost it, you can actually affect the boost by the attenuation. So it almost gives the boost a different sort of bell curve, a different sort of frequency range that it cuts and boosts. Anyway, I'll cover this later. Let's go quick. 100 hertz. So what I'm doing is just boosting 60 or 100 hertz. I'm putting the plugin in or out. But watch this. If I like this frequency, I can actually clean up what it's introducing by doing this, pulling up the attenuation. Have a listen. I can also see this going over, so I can pull down the gain, so it's not distorting the plugin. Digital distortion, terrible. Go through this later. You can also boost some top end, but I'm going to leave it for this stage. Let's have a listen to this plugin with and without. So I want to add more 100 Hertz, because I picked that frequency, I can actually let that through a little bit more, or cut it and make it cleaner with the attenuation. Very cool EQ, very different type of EQ, but that's what it's doing. Getting to a stage where it's nice and sounding huge. Now let's put back on the API, turn off this analog sound because it just adds white hiss. Please, Waves, if you can, make this a default off. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to add a little bit more presence to the track, to the bass, so it cuts through on different speakers. So you've got a few different options. So I'll boost it 100 Hertz. If I want it to sit above a kick drum, I'm going to go 180 and boost it. If I want to make the bass more tighter and give it more of a suck the air out of it, I'm going to cut the 500 Hertz out. $500 Hertz, what's this? Over here, it fights with the bass a little bit. I'm gonna suck that shit out. If I want my bass to be a little bit more rowdy and a little bit more so it cuts through the speakers, depending on what speaker you got, this is an aggressive frequency that you can use. 1.5K. Watch. We go extreme. So what you're listening there with the 1.5K is when I boost it to that extreme level, you're almost fingering bass a lot more. So you're gritting it. Don't think dirty if I said fingering, right? But you're fingering it and you're like smashing it a lot more. So you hear a lot more of the vibrations, the attack of the bass when I put it through. That attack, it's like me plucking that shit out, and you're going to hear it cut through all sorts of speakers because that frequency could just poke through. Again, if you have a dirty mind, this was not intended, but just focus, yeah? So going on that, let's get back to the EQ example. Another cool frequency you want to boost to 2.5. That'll cut through. Watch, I can reduce this bad boy down. So what I just did there is I just reduced the volume, but I'm messing with the frequency that pops through your ears. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just follow the YouTube before. If not, I can do a specialized YouTube tutorial just on this. So all I've done now, here we go. So you got all the settings that I'm using, not messing around, nothing fucking spectacular. So first EQ in the setting, I'm taking out the frequencies I don't need. Second EQ, taking out more of the air frequencies. Second plugin I have on is a tonal shaper, the CLA2A, which is adding the low mid bad boy that I need to get my song sounding thicker and better. Next, I have a Pultec EQ, which is adding the low end frequency, a lot differently from me just putting 100 Hertz on this. Works totally differently. Now I've got an API EQ to add a little bit more point to my direction. Cutting out the frequencies I don't need, which is the 500 Hertz, which makes it add a little bit more air, which I don't want at this stage. Next thing I'm going to do is add the 1.5K, which is going to make it cut through and make it more aggressive sounding because I'm playing the notes harder. Then I have the 2.5K, which is going to make that shit cut through on all different speakers. I've added some cool stuff to EQ it, compress it, do some bad boy stuff to it. But I can also go a little bit more further with it. I can physically shape how the kick and snare works with the bass by adding a compressor with attack and release to it. I want to go into compressors a lot more in detail with you guys. I need to, I want to, I'm going to do it even if you guys say, gee, I don't know about this shit. I've seen 200 million of this stuff. But if I can explain it the way I've been told and been trained, let's put a little bit of a light bulb moment there. Trust me, it'll save you so much time. Anyway, let me get into this compressor stuff. So right now, I'm going to put a compressor on. Another one by Waves, CLA 76, based on the Yuri 1176. Let's check it out. All right, this is a bad boy of a compressor. Sounds amazing. Obviously, it's in bypass. I've got my input, which affects the threshold. The more I input, the more it compresses. This is my final output stage. The attack is the opposite to what you think. That's a slow attack. That's a quick attack. Quick, slow. So if I want to punch a kick drum, I want the attack to come through and I want it to be a quick release. This is my settings. I also have a ratio section here, which I can go 20:1, which is more limiting, 12, and then to the more gentle stages. This all button, oh, that is a bad boy. That's very fun to use, but let me not get into that now. I'll just go 4:1. So right now, my objective for using this compressor in the chain that I'm using over here, focus, over here, is I want to control it in a way. So I want it to sit with the kick drum by messing with my attack and release. The more forward I want the bass, the more slower the attack. I can push the attack back to sit behind the kick drum. This is ear training exercises 101, but let's go through it right now. The idea is I want to make the kick drum up front, so I want to push the bass a little bit in the background, and I want the groove to last a little bit longer. So I'm going to pull my release down a bit so it sits with the kick drum. If you want more examples about this, please hit me up. Alright, cool. So I've got an EQ to control the frequencies I don't want, add some color, adding 100 hertz, adding some goodness, controlling the envelope of the sound. Now, I'm going to cut a frequency that's interfering with my bass. And this is always going to happen. You need to pick a battle which is going to work. So what you need to pick is either who's going to win the low end battle. Is it going to be the kick drum? Is it going to be the bass on top? Or is it going to be the other way? There's only really one person that can realistically win that battle, and you need to pick which drives the track. Is it going to be the bass? Is it going to be the kick? Then from there, you can sort of filter out or come up with a plan. It's like, what's going to work? So do I add that 50 hertz in that kick drum? Boom, boom, boom. Or do I suck a little bit of that 50 hertz out and add that in the bass? Boom, boom, boom. So suddenly I'm coming out with not this, I'm coming out with this. It breathes, it moves, it's sort of more organic sort of sounding. But you need to pick something that works. So if you're not picking a frequency that's working with the kick drum, obviously your shit's going to get sound, you know, your shit's going to sound muddy. It's going to sound like terrible, to be honest. Like, who the hell wins? I could add a side chain, I could do this, but a side chain is pulling that frequency out every time that kick drum comes in. But what if I want to feel them both at the same time? Suddenly I can't do boom, boom, boom. I need to spread it and they come through. So it's a puzzle. So if I'm boosting 50 hertz on the kick drum and I want my kick drum to win the low end battle, how about cut that shit out of the bass? 50 hertz. Suddenly I've just let a little bit of space in, just to be gentle. Getting in a good spot. Think of that up the spectrum, like wherever you're colliding with stuff, think who's going to win that battle and maybe let a little bit of air in through. Let it come through the way you want. Cool. All right. Let's go back to where we need to get to. I'm just going to cut a little bit of 150 to 180. I'm going to boost it. Hopefully you can hear that. I'm just cutting the frequency out so you don't sort of get too drawn to it. If you want some crazy shit on your bass, this is something you can either use as a parallel or you can use it on your track. This is based on the Fairchild 670, which has pretty much 20 tubes at the back of this, which cost like, I don't know, like 40 to 60 grand Australian. It is a monster. I've been privileged enough to use this many times in my life, and there's nothing like this. This plug-in by Wave sounds amazing. I'll show you how to use it into a stage where you can actually get some cool sounds from it. So think of this, if you're not going to use it as a compressor, I'm using this as a tonal shaper, so like an EQ. I'm going to drive the shit out of this bad boy. Then we've got a threshold of how much you're compressing. This is your release time. And this is your output stage. You can either have separate for your left, right. You can link it. Watch this. This is going to pile in my mid-range. I'm going to drive it in. Watch me pull the threshold down so it's not compressing. All right, all you gear nuts, I know, but let's not focus on that, yeah? We're rule breakers, not, rule followers. If that's really bothering you, all right. So what I want you to focus on now, when I bypass this in and out, is listen to the mid-range factor. Okay, I get the levels different, but listen to the tonality that I'm adding to. So let me put this in the track a little bit more. But all I'm going to do is manipulate this so it comes in and out, and you can hear it cut through the track. Without. Okay, if you guys haven't heard what I just did, that's just adding the presence in it. All I'm doing is just adding that compressor, but driving the tube emulation of that plugin to give it that tonal factor that I need. That's it. It's not even compressing, but I'm just using it as a character, like a guitar pedal, like picking a different type of guitar to electric guitar to a bass to a different type of kick drum. You know, I'm using a plugin to add character the way I want into a track. Not necessarily picking it to add compression, to add EQ, to add this, to add that. No, not doing it. So pick these sounds that work with you, and hopefully I can give you a little bit of inspiration to try it. It'll make it cut through. What I just did on the Hugh Child 670, which is the emulation of the Fairchild 670, which is expensive motherfucker, that, you know, you could add it on a piano, on a MIDI piano. I'll show you some stuff later, but to add some EQs that I'll show you and add this at the end, that'll give the life, and almost like when you're playing it, like you're actually banging on the strings and you can feel the strings vibrate and stuff like that. You can add it on horns to add a little bit of distortion of the horns on a microphone to capture that sort of sound. You got so much cool stuff to play with. These are all cool plugins, yeah? All cool plugins to try, all cool plugins to mess with. But hopefully, I'm showing you a way to use a compressor without actually compressing. I'm using it to show you an EQ and tonal change that you could do to an instrument. This is, you know, once you get a use of a compressor, yeah, I'm just going to add it to compress the dynamics. Screw that. Suddenly I've got tonal aspects. Now I am the sort of guy controlling the orchestra. Word will come to me. Probably won't. Anyway, I'm the conductor. There it is. I'm the conductor. I'm the one saying how you should play this over here. You should like chill it over there. Give me a little bit of this. Give me a little bit of that. By me mixing, I can control and maneuver the things that I want through the uses of EQ, compression, effects, automation, and your creativity. You can do what you want. Now let me just show you one example and then we're done. So what I've done is I've just bust this track into a send. So I'm sending this track into another track which I've created here, and the input of that track is a bus. So I'm sending a copy of all this processing into a new track to process differently. So to make life easy, let's go bass distort. I'm going to rename this track so you can see what's going on into this. Bass distort going into here. So currently, if you look at this view, I've got my original bass track with the processing being sent into this bass distortion send, which is essentially just taking a copy of the sound and putting it into this new track, which I have the input of this. So pretty much I've got this sound happening, but then I can manipulate it further. I can do some other cool shit. I can do whatever I want to it from now. So let's have a listen to it on with a setting I've just picked out of a preset. To be honest, I haven't messed around too much with it. Let's go here. Ooh, that'll blow your ears off. Sound Toys plugin, really cool decapitator. It's a distortion plugin pretty much. But what I want to do, and the idea of this track, is I want to add some movement to it. I want to get the bass moving with the track, so it glides almost. So mind your ears. I'm just going to go through some presets right now. And I'm going to send this track to this track now. Okay, hopefully you can see what I just did. I just muted the track, muted the send. All right, let's go with it. So the way I think of the decapitator, it's an awesome plugin. You can punish the shit out of the sound by the way it's being driven. So think of driving it first and punishing it. So you can go over with the drive distortion. You can pick where you want to cut the frequencies. You can add some thump in it. Add the tonal aspect. Do you want to go more brighter, more darker? That's pretty much an EQ fill alongside with this. This is the tonal fill, so the higher up you go, I feel it adds different tonalities to it. But this is a little bit more mid-rangey that I feel. You got the output stage and you got your mix stage. So this is like your parallel. All right, if you can't tell right now, it's late and I'm just having a bit of fun with it, but I'm just like muting it in and out. Or if I don't want to mute it in and out, I want to side chain the kick drum to this. So the kick triggers that distortion the way I want, to add a little bit more of a different feel into this. Here we go. I try to keep the video short, but so much information. Here we go, I'm gonna go bus 1. That's the kick drum. I'm gonna make this pre-fader, so no matter what I do with this fader, it's always triggering the kick drum. If you don't know the difference between pre and post, let's cover that later, but I'm assuming now you know the difference between pre and post. On the SSL plugin, another one of our waves, I'm gonna put the key input as bus 1. So now the kick drum is triggering the bass to work the way I want, and then I can manipulate it. So it's working different from a compressor. It's almost working where the compressor is doing its thing, but the kick drum is influencing it. So I've got like a third party factor, like an annoying person or annoying wife or annoying whatever, just like always interrupting. But I can control how much they annoy me or whatnot. Let me go extreme. So notice the kick will just trigger it as it goes. Watch the VU meter. Boom, boom, boom. But now, once the kick hits the compressor, I can manipulate the attack and release to make it groove a little bit. So this is a slow attack to a quick attack. What do you think? So I can make this distortion sit behind the kick drum and the original bass by just manipulating the attack and release. So that's a little bit about the bass, doing some EQ moves, compression moves that I was telling you about, using compressors as EQs, which I think is very crucial to sort of understand and learn about, but also using a plugin and another channel and a send to make your bass move and feel like it's adding some stuff. So beyond that, I've added some cool stuff to the bass, but also made that move in a particular way. So now I've got two bass lines going, but they interact differently with the track, just by the settings I've used. So you could use sidechains, you could use gates, you could use filters, you could use choruses, you could use delays, whatever you need to. The idea is I'm creating movement, but it's not all the way through. I'm pushing and pulling stuff. No? Yeah? I hope so. Anyway, I hope this inspires you. This is G talking in from Australia right now, but I'm going to be traveling around. Hopefully this inspires you to give you some inspiration to do some creative stuff with your music to inspire other people.